Hey, Joe coming at you with today's video from my kitchen. What do you think of my branding, by the way? On Acorn squash. And today we're going to go through and talk about Acorn squash, three angles. One, I'm going to talk about nutritional value. I'm going to talk about some recipes. And the last segment is going to be me showing somebody how to cut an acorn squash, my daughter. So it should be fun. So let me go through first and talk about acorn squash. It's a beautiful vegetable that I think a lot of people forget about, and it's usually available late fall, autumn into winter. They call it winter squash sometimes, but acorn squash, notice the shape of it, I think is where that name comes from. But here's the thing, the nutritional value is amazing, and I think it's underestimated. Number one, it's packed with macros. Macros being fiber, 9 grams per serving. That's pretty impressive, right? So the macros are also impressive, that in a serving, there's only 115 calories. A serving would be 1 cup. Now think about that, 115 is pretty low, right? But secondarily, the carbohydrate is a complex carb. It's not a highly refined carb, so it's from whole food. So it's a complex carbohydrate, so it's a slower carb. Really gonna help with a better way to get your carbohydrate intake, right? So micros on this one. Of course, when you cut into it, which we'll be doing later, it's very yellow, which means it's got a lot of vitamin A, which of course, you know, vitamin A and beta carotene for eyesight, for skin, for immune system. Vitamin C is the second micro, very high. It's a powerful antioxidant, and you know how important vitamin C is. Folate, there's a lot of folic acid in this. B vitamins is essential for a lot of bodily functions, especially at the cellular level for cell division. And then fourth, I didn't know this, potassium. Actually more potassium in an acorn squash serving than there is in a banana. So that's kind of impressive. Number two, what are some recipes? Well, I'll tell you what, everything that I'm talking about is in much more detail on my blog. And if you're not on it already, you really need to get on my email. That's you can send me an email at rxhealthyhabits@gmail.com and say, you know, I want to be subscribed. You can unsubscribe anytime, but one of the things we do is we send out a blog every week, and this blog is going to be in there with references on everything I'm going to talk about, especially the recipes, because there's so many great recipes. But without the blog, you wouldn't get that, because I can't take that time in the video, because I don't like long videos. But here's some of the most popular. You take this, you cut it in half, you use some butter, pepper, and maybe a little olive oil, and you can put it into the oven and bake it at 400 degrees. I like it that way because then I get to spoon out what I want, and you usually don't end up getting more of a cup in a serving, so it's kind of cool. That's a real good one. Now, some people like you set them in if they want to do sweetness, you can do whatever you want. It takes a little while. It takes 25 to 30 minutes, so be prepared for that. Acorn squash soup, that's the second recipe that people love. And actually what they do is they'll cut it in half, and I'll show you that you can peel it after you cook it for a little while so the skin comes off easy. Then they make a puree, and they add a little bit of cream, coconut. They like to put some garlic, onions in there with vegetable broth. And then when this is cut open, they put the soup back into the acorn squash shell, and it's kind of cool to eat it that way. It's kind of a nice little touch. Stuffed acorn squash, and the recipes here are endless. There's so many things you can fill inside the acorn squash and bake. That's a big one. Here's one that people love, acorn squash fries. So check that out on the website. And you can go to RxHealthyHabits.com, and in there's a whole section of blog that if you don't get on my newsletter, which I recommend you do, and you can read about it in the blog. So the next thing we want to talk about, but I'm not going to do it until the next part of this segment of video, is how to cut an acorn squash. And before I begin, I got to caution you. This is why a lot of people are very scared of these, because they're not easy to handle if you don't have some basic knowledge about how to cut it. So we'll be covering that. And I'll tell you what though, one of my go-to favorites, and it's not available all year round. So I would really recommend you get into acorn squash, and in the next segment, learn how to cut it safely so you don't cut your arm off, okay? Okay, as promised, we're going to go through and cut this bad boy, and I tell you what, a lot of people are intimidated with acorn squash because it's so hard to do, but what I've done to show you just how easy it is, my granddaughter is going to be the victim, I'm sorry, not the victim, the,
test subject.
The test subject. She's going to show you how to do it, and if she cuts her finger or cuts her finger off, then you know what not to do. So with no more further ado, here's my granddaughter Savvy.
Thank you very much.
So Savvy, now tell us the different ways that you've seen how they cut this. Tell us the different ways you've seen.
So a couple different ways I've seen is where people will cut off the top right here so then they can lay it flat and cut down. But for me, I think it'll be easier if I lay it down on the side and then let the knife do all the work. So that's what I'm going to do today.
So you're going to go in and you're going to hold that firm, and you're going to go into one of these ridges, right? Yep. All right, now that's at an angle. Do you want an angle or you want to get up straight?
Up straight.
Okay, so be careful, kid. Be careful. So that was harder than you thought, huh? Be careful.
So some technical difficulties ensued, and I want to keep my fingers. God gave me 10. I intend to keep 10. So instead, he's lived a long, nice life. He doesn't need all of them. We're going to let him do it.
Okay, so there's a couple different ways, like Sab said. You can cut this top off, and I tried doing that. It's a little bit tough. I got a pretty good knife. This is a really heavy knife. So instead, I like my technique that I saw in one of the videos, and that's this. You got to keep your fingers away, but what you do is you kind of like just puncture the squash like this. Maybe it's not so easy. And then go straight down like the sword of Damocles, right? And then I let the knife, maybe not. Yeah. I let the knife do the work. Not working out so great. No. No. Okay.
I'm not weak, it's the squash. Here's our next attempt.
Okay, here we go. Now we're going to go back to what they said the experts said we should do. And you got to be very careful though to keep your hands away, but we're going to cut that top part off. See it? Okay. Now we're going to stand it up. This should be easier, we hope to God, because this is our third take. And this was supposed to be how easy it was to cut acorn squash. How's it going for me so far? Not
well,
so
you've
good.
taken off the tip.
Well, we can take this tip off then too. Sass. How's that? This is a figuring out as you go type of video here. So much for it being easy. Oh, now this is.
Gee.
How's that, Sab? Watch. Look at that.
Guess that is the right idea.
That is the right way to do it. You see? So after all that, we figured it out. Now, pretty simple.
This is why we don't listen to you.
This is why you don't listen to me. I don't blame you. I almost got you hurt. You were going to be the sacrificial
lamb.
Pretty much. So you got to get all that junk out of there, right? Of course. And then, I'm not going to do this when you get the idea. Then there's a couple ways you can go with it. You can roast it like this whole, or you could take your knife now, set it like this so it's a lot safer. You take your knife and you just cut down and make like wedges. So then you can bake those and then make like a nice snack for if you got a spread going on, you want some nice vegetable snack. That's it. You can olive oil, butter, salt, garlic powder if you want. Beautiful. Some people take this, they'll roast these and they'll just spoon them out. Some people peel them. Now Sassy or Sab and I really think it'd be tough to peel these without you baking it first a little bit to get the skin. You could peel it. It's going to be a lot harder to do that. My suggestion is you bake a little bit first, and then you can take, if you want to chunk all this up and make like a puree for a soup. That's another thing is people love acorn squash soup, and sometimes if you spoon this out too, instead of peeling it, just spoon all this out and puree it. You can take that and use that for your bowl. Kind of cool, huh?
Yeah.
Seb, what do you think?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
All right, so that was so simple, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, very simple. Absolutely.
And something that you'll probably never want to do acorn squash in your life, right? Unless you buy it already chunked up.
Just don't do it. It's not worth it.
No, don't listen.
Butternut squash is better anyways.
Butternut squash is good, but don't listen to her. It is worth it. And I tell you what, when you put that in the oven with a little bit of pepper, salt, olive oil, and spoon it out, it's delicious.
It's hard for no reason.
You've had it before. You've had a butternut squash. You're lying. You've had it. You enjoyed it. You just didn't.
Yeah, I like acorn squash.
You just don't want to cut it.
Yeah.
All right. Hope that helps. Not sure.